Okay, everybody, welcome to the 34th Two Autumns reading series. This is the crown jewel of haiku North America. Haiku poets of haiku poets of California. So today we have 4 readers for you, and I'm going to introduce Tanya McDonald, who is going to lead the reading. So let me introduce her to you. Tanya McDonald is the founder and editor of Kingfisher, a pocket-sized haiku and synergy journal. She has edited various anthologies, included HSA Members Anthology in 2019, and has assisted with anthologies for Haiku Northwest, the Portland Haiku Group, and the Seebeck Haiku Getaway. Her own haiku, senru, haiban, and renge, and occasional talk have appeared in journals and anthologies since 2008. She is currently serving as the HSA Regional Coordinator for Oregon. Known for her bright plumage, she is frequently distracted by birds and interesting rocks. Here you go, Tanya.
Thank you very much, Gary. I'm looking at my view here and it's awkward because I can't see myself speaking, so I will try not to make any silly faces. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you all here for the Two Autumns reading. I remember how much fun it was when I was a reader back in 2013, I think, and it was, of course, in person. But a lot of you wouldn't have been able to join because you're coming from much further afield. So it's nice to have it on Zoom so we can all see each other. It was an honor to be entrusted with this year's anthology. I had a great time putting it together. For those of you who may not have seen it yet, I think everyone's received copies, but if you're a new member, you might not have seen it yet. This is what I did. Wildflowers in Bloom is the title. And I'm just going to talk about it very briefly, then we're going to get into the reading. Sarah Paris will start us off, and I will introduce her when we get there. So it's really tricky to actually do an anthology like this because you get to read a bunch of poems by people, but then you have to select only 12 per poet. So as I'm sure most of you know, these poets have been in journals and published profusely. And so narrowing it down to 12 poems each, I think, is every anthology editor's difficulty with this project. But it's a wonderful project, and it's a wonderful problem to have. And to get to read so many poems by a single person is an absolute treat. So after selecting the haiku, which took a while, I requested publishing credits from the poets because all of the poems in this anthology have been previously published. They've been vetted by another editor before they even got to me. And everyone sent back stuff, but I knew Debbie had been in and out of the hospital a lot frequently, Deborah P Kolodji. And it was during this time that I received the news that she had passed away. I am very grateful to her son, Sean Carlton, and to Charlie Trumbull for looking up the poems and where they first appeared. I would not have been able to do that on my own. So the cover itself, I just want to mention very briefly, since I didn't mention it in the anthology itself. If you can see it, I should have done a screen share. So we'll just put it there and talk, and you can look at it instead of me for a couple moments. This is from Columbia Hills State Park up in Washington, just across the river from Oregon. And I was on a wildflower walk with my sister and her husband a couple years ago. And the title poem, as if you've read the anthology, you probably have realized, comes from one of Debbie's poems, which will be read later today. And I just thought it was appropriate because we are all wildflowers and we all make up the haiku community in different ways. We all have, some of us are very bright and sparkly. Some of us are just all over the place. Some are just very individual, rare flowers. And I just really liked the idea of that and the road just going on because we're all in that same road, all wandering through the wildflowers together. And it was really important that HPNC is such a big community. I only lived in California for 10 months of my life, but I very much enjoyed my time there. And so I still feel that connection to California. Let's see, what else did I want to mention really quickly? I went with a local printer on this. The margins are a little bit strange, but it is with a local printer here in Portland, Oregon, because I felt it was important to support a local business as opposed to getting a print on demand, which can be easier and can be a little bit cheaper to do sometimes. But printers are hard to come by, and they have a very important job, and a lot have disappeared, I think, since the pandemic. So I felt it was important to support someone like that. Let's see. The last thing I want to say is, before we start the reading, is I want to apologize profusely to Ron Moss, because as those of you who've seen his work for years and years and years in the journal know, he goes by, his publishing name is Ron C. Moss. And I neglected, through my own fault, to put the C in there. So please, when you read the poems and when you see on the back, please imagine that there is a C in for his middle initial there. I do apologize, Ron, for that. And if anyone wants the PDF, the corrected PDF, and wants to print it out themselves, I do have a corrected PDF that I can send you. So without further ado, let's get on with the reading, which is why we're all here. I'm going to read the bio in the anthology first, and then that poet will give their reading. Some people have visuals, so we'll do the share screen for that, and some people are reading. And as Gary was saying, afterwards, you can unmute when the reader's finished, and you can make comments and whatnot before we move on to the next reader. The order is going to be Sarah Paris, Jeff Hoagland, and then we're going to have a break. Then Ron C. Moss, and 2 members of Debbie Kolodji's family. And I would also ask, because those readers who are reading, it's really difficult, having been on that side of the fence before, to look at comments while you're doing a presentation. I would ask that if you can refrain from chatting during the reading, that would be fantastic, because it can be a little distracting to the readers themselves if messages keep popping up on the screen. So please just wait till the end of the reading and then feel free to gush. All right, Sarah Paris is a Swiss-American poet, writer, editor, photographer, and former journalist. She co-founded and for many years led the Four Seasons Haiku Kai at Mercy Center, Burlingame. She currently serves as second vice president of the Haiku Society of America, but her greatest joy is learning from her haiku mentees. In 2021, she was awarded a first prize in the San Francisco International Haiku, Senyu, and Tonka contest. In addition to writing haiku, senyu, and haiban, she is the author of 2 novellas, The Hermit and The Traveler, as Chris Solano. Waywards, a collection of short stories, and the German language novel, which I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, published in Switzerland. Please welcome Sarah Paris.
Thank you so much, Tanya. And thank you very much for putting together such a beautiful collection. And thank you, Gary, and all the HPNC officers for inviting me to read in 2 Autumns. It's a great honor to be here in the company of such esteemed poets, and it's a special honor to be here to commemorate the wonderful Deborah Kolodji. My presentation will be relatively short. I will read a few haiku, both from the selection that Tanya put together so beautifully, and a few from my own recent collection. And then I will finish up with 2 haiban. So let me attempt to share my screen here. Okay, this should be visible to all. Tanya, give me a thumbs up. Good. So first, a couple of haiku from Wildflowers in Bloom. And hopefully my voice is not going to give out. Spring weeding, the persistent chip chip of a towhee. Sunbeams, rediscovering ecstasy on a swing. Baiting each other across the creek, kingfishers. At the feet of charred trees, poppies. Fallow field inside a sheep's skull. Sorry, my Zoom screen there gets in the way. Wild iris. Meditation retreat, a blue mug with a chipped edge. Okay, and now I'm going to read a few selections from For the Birds, a collection that came out this year with Red Moon Press. Before I do that, I was invited to say a few words about my writing process. And I have to say, I'm not a very analytical writer, so really all I can say is that I find most of my inspiration in nature and what I encounter there. And since many of the creatures I meet are birds, they make very frequent appearances in my haiku. My first haiku teacher was also a teacher of Zen, a Jesuit priest named Father Hand, known to us as Hando. For him, haiku was an expression of connection, a moment of no separation between the observer and the observed. I would say that to some degree, this is still my own approach, which is not to say that I don't also write my fair share of desku. But ultimately, the joy of haiku for me is that the practice is never ending. And it's amazing to me how much I still learn about this deceptively simple art form. A swallow lifts morning fog. Or perhaps morning fog lifts a swallow. Zazen, ravens adrift on the wind. Pickup day, the crows talking trash. Grace note on the mailbox, a bluebird. Spring wind turning a new leaf. Hedging their beds, hummingbird and honeysuckle. The frog shaking its head, egret. Hillside, hidden in bright light, a hermit thrush. Swallows skim the water ripples, summer breeze. This is actually a monoku, but I didn't have enough space to put one line there. Same here. Between river and ocean, the wingspan of pelicans. Outdoor shower. A green and red gecko starts and stops. After the rain, the morning doves coo, cooler. Peeling potatoes, my grandmother's hands. Sitting in the oak, a solitary bird and its song. Outside the walls, herons guard the shore, San Quentin. Ash Wednesday, the wind carries them across the border. Picnic in the redwoods, the load a little lighter. Dusk lament a lesser goldfinch. Autumn moon overlooking the river, my brother's keeper. White dawn, a heron traces the empty sky. Okay. I have two Haiban that I'm going to read. One is a little long and the other is shorter. They are both connected to the Bay Area, as is fitting for this occasion. I write, as Tanya mentioned, I also write prose. And so being somebody who writes both haiku and prose, Haiban, you would think would come naturally to me. And when I started writing Haiban, I found that I was actually struggling quite a bit, and it wasn't as easy as I thought. So I'm still learning a lot about the form, but making progress. So the first Haiban takes place in a location, a watering hole that might actually be familiar to some of you old San Franciscans. And it's called Salunatics. Huck and I were hanging outside the saloon, sharing a cigarette and watching Shane mount his bike. Shane is a big guy, and his bike is massive. The engine roars as it's kicked into life. Man and machine, you could cast them as heavies in a biker gang movie. Yet, only last month, Shane was sobbing like a kid at the memorial of Charlie the sailor who quietly drank himself into a rum-soaked grave. Too many old lunatics have been dying lately. The other day, two French boys walked in, stopped, and looked around in wonder. Bienvenue, I said. Welcome to the city's oldest bar, 150 years of spirits. Just ask him, and I pointed to Huck's thin, sallow face and long silver hair. He's been here since the beginning. And for just a second I had them, until they laughed, relieved and mildly charmed. Une blague, a joke. In truth, the place is filled with ghosts of bartenders, dancers, poets, and musicians. Before she was famous, Janice drank here, and I imagine her sweet, crooked smile, her naked heart, ready to be pierced. Huck never met her. He arrived in '76, a soft-faced art student, eyes scanning the hills as if sensing a future that would condemn him to dance behind the bar, juggling shot glasses and pain, raising two kids that weren't his, taking care of every wandering soul while his own was pacing up and down the night streets, taking photographs he never showed to anyone, not even me. Nightshade, what the moon reveals. What did they do with his ashes? I pray that they cast them into the clear, cold Yosemite River, the place he loved so much, away from this dirty alley where we were holding on to each other, sharing a smoky kiss and watching Shane and his bike drift away. North Beach Alley, hearing the blues, I miss the blues. This was published in Presence this year. I'm not quite sure why the Brits thought that a Haiban about San Francisco was interesting to them, but who knows, maybe they were here and visited. My second Haiban takes place in a location that also may be familiar to some of you Bay Area folks. Hopefully you've only seen it from the outside and not from the inside. 43 years. Over lunch with my friend Jarvis, our talk meanders between the serious and the silly, news of family and friends, political circus, our writing projects, jibes on the joys of getting older, and our ongoing argument about how many sodas are too much. 2 is your max, I scold, citing once again the amount of sugar in one can. Jarvis rolls his eyes and counters with his supposedly excellent vital signs. Yeah, and what about those cluster headaches? I think, but I know those are not related to his love of junk food only to the stress of living in a place not meant for living. Then we're both quiet for a while, contemplating the leftover popcorn on the low plastic table that separates us. Why am I still here? He asks, and I have no answer. Fall dusk, a black moth at my window. There's a poster in the corridor behind our cage that asks, contemplating suicide? In English and Spanish, listing a helpline. I want to comment on the absurdity of the question here on death row, but I realize it is actually meant for the guards. Winter, lost by the river, footprints. Thank you. And that, oops, no, I wanted to say one more thing, that this poem was written in honor of my friend of 3 decades, Jarvis J. Masters, known as a Buddhist and a writer, a man who has never killed anyone and yet is still in prison after 43 years. And now I'll stop sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was wonderful. Wonderful to start off that way. We are going to shift gears a little bit and move on to Jeff Hoagland, who hopefully has a recovered laptop enough to read for us today. I'm going to read Jeff's bio from the anthology, and then we'll hand it over to him. Jeff Hoagland is a lifelong naturalist with a passion for the wild. He practices haiku to stay connected to the real world while leading an intentional, mission-oriented life. He is the education director at the Watershed Institute in New Jersey. His haiku, found widely in haiku journals and anthologies, typically express a profound intimacy with nature with a touch of humor or a deep reverence. Jeff's first collection, Scent of Juniper, published by Red Moon Press, received an honorable mention in the Haiku Society of America's Merit Book Awards in 2024. Jeff is the associate editor for The Heron's Nest. He is continually grateful for the warmth and fellowship of the haiku community. Over to you, Jeff.
All right, thank you so much. And yeah, I guess I'll just start off almost like a disclaimer. I'm always in awe of the haiku community. If I stop and think about it, I guess I'm not a newcomer, but I still feel like a newcomer because when I jumped in 15 years ago, I see all these people who were doing it then. So grateful that I'm here today sharing this space with you. I should, if that was a disclaimer, then here's a claimer. I am a native Californian, was born in Modesto and lived in the Central Valley in my very early years. We moved to New Jersey when I was about 5. And, when you're really little, maybe this isn't a fact, I'm going to state it as such. You're deeply connected to the natural world, and our culture does nothing to honor that. So it's kind of miraculous when some of us arrive through childhood still with a deep love of the natural world, burning curiosity, and that's me. And so what I remember about Modesto, despite it being Modesto, no offense, was fence lizards on the fence in our backyard. A pine forest, which upon revisiting the house maybe 10 years ago, I realized was a tree. We had 1/4 of an acre. I remember seeing a mushroom grow out of the ground. It wasn't there yesterday, it grew overnight, and that just startled me. I remember seeing really my first black widow was my father captured one and was trying to show me that it was dangerous, but I was just utterly fascinated. I think as a little kid, it was like, wow, that could kill me. So anyway, I have been back to California frequently, not frequent enough lately. I feel like I worked at Point Reyes Bird Observatory. And when this place, I'm actually sitting at work right now just because there wouldn't be disturbances, when the Watershed called me twice and I came back. And Point Reyes Bird Observatory, there were these kindred spirits who didn't necessarily all believe in sleep. There was this fascination for the natural world. That was a new habitat for me, so sleep was detrimental. I had to go out and see it all, and really, really did see California on a new level there. So that's probably enough of a claimer. Yeah, so where did I come from? Let me just start off with a little background, because maybe my journey isn't all that unusual, but I feel like it is, because I got into haiku kind of through the back door, I guess. I vaguely remember being exposed to haiku. And I remember in college at a used bookstore, always a fan of used bookstores, found a collection. And there was this guy, Issa, right? Issa, I really identified with Issa's sort of sympathetic view of the smaller creatures, the downtrodden. There's a quirky sense of humor in there sometimes, but there's a sense of reverence for things that don't ever receive reverence. And made a note of it, and it disappeared. Life goes on. I'm a naturalist. That's my true love life. And then somewhere along the way, I fell back into it, and it was Issa again. And I realized that living this kind of very busy life, not that other people's lives aren't full, but a lot of important things keep you away from other important things. So my life is full of family and community and work. I'm highly committed to my work. I've been here 40 years. It's easy to lose touch of some of these other things. And I've always kind of joked that, my real love life is the natural world. So when I stumbled back into haiku, it was a means of, tapping my creative soul, but more so just to kind of fortify my experience in the natural world, even when I'm very busy. It's a way to kind of chronicle in a nonfiction way, sometimes really profound things. Sometimes they're just very personal. But that's what I was doing. And it was very spontaneous. I'd reach into a pocket. I wonder what I have. Yep, there's always a piece of paper in a pocket. Yeah, there's a grocery list. Okay, so I would write this stuff down in the back of it. It would end up on top of the washing machine. And at one point, my wife scolded me, like, "What is all this?" So I proclaimed what it was. I put a box there. I said a box of haiku, and I stuffed it. And one day at work, it was a third grade class from a little town. And at this point in my career, I had a habit of getting up with the sun and going out before a program. So this program was at our pond here. We have about 1,000 acres here. And I go out about an hour beforehand, just so I can have my one-on-one relationship with nature before 30 kids come flooding in. And there was this quiet moment where this red bat was, and I'd never identified a red bat. This was clearly a red bat because of its color. It's early morning and it's flying over the pond, but just dipping down to the surface. I have binoculars because I'm a birder. Is it eating bugs off the surface? Couldn't really tell. I think it was just drinking. I've certainly stuck with that. So quick, what do I have? Probably a dollar bill. And I don't have this preserved. Wrote down a haiku for myself. This was practice always for me. And school bus comes, that moment's forgotten until I'm standing right at that spot with happened to be about 15 kids. I say, "Hey, let me just tell you about this encounter I had." And I pulled out this piece of paper. And I don't remember the true haiku, but from memory, the haiku has become morning sun, one sip at a time, red bat. And so the kids were really intrigued by this exchange. I didn't think anything of it, went on with the content of our program, which was clean water and life in a pond. But about a week to 10 days later, I get a book from the school, and I open it up, and every child has illustrated a scene from the field trip, as well as added an accompanying haiku. And that was a really important moment for me. That's why I'm taking the time to share it, because it said to me, okay, this is a personal practice, but I'm supposed to share it. And then, as some of you may have tried, you know, how do you share that? You know, you drop that in at a party, you get some chuckles or at best. So I literally got online and just typed in, I Googled what, best haiku journals, as I wasn't sure anything was going to come up. And there was actually a paper, I can't remember who did it. I don't know, might have been from Randy Brooks. I shouldn't say it was from him, but somebody had assembled that. So thus now, you know, I share that way. I really try, I do, I live a fast-paced life. So while I'm going from here to there, I try to be receptive and attentive to everything, you know, the light splashing on the autumn spice bush, the call of a distant raven. I swear ravens are talking to me specifically. The scent of the goldenrod, that's in full bloom now. Small creatures underfoot, they always get my attention. And that those are great things that have found their way into haiku. And I will say that, you know, one of the gifts here is, you know, there's a label for it, attention deficit disorder. It fuels my creative process big time and really is a big part of that relationship. So what I'd like to do before I actually read is, well, let me just say I do really try to maintain this intimacy with the wild and with the rhythms of the natural world. I just came from an environmental educators conference where I used haiku to do that. And it was people, I think their overwhelming response was that it was good medicine for a busy life. So that was kind of good. But let's take a moment. I'm going to ask you to do something, even though you were asked not to. I want you to just type in something in the chat that is happening right now as part of the nature cycle where you are. And I know most of you are in California, but I also know California has so many biomes, so you might have very different things. I just think it would be interesting to have a collection there before I move on, and you guys can refer to that as well.
Birds and tree.
And I'll give you a minute, just a minute before I continue. And just to, yes, I will say, Tanya, I am being mindful of the time. I'm watching the little box flash with things, which is really fun. While people are typing in, you know, what's going on here, it's migration season, which I know there's some of you afflicted with, you know, the birding thing, which I was since I was at Point Reyes Bird Observatory. Last week I showed up at our farm and there were 14 kestrels, just each on a fence post. I'd never seen that before. That was really cool. Monarchs and dragonflies. I don't know what's going on with monarchs. I'm a little nervous because they usually are really passing through in big numbers. This part of September, I don't see as many. Certainly the dragonfly migration's going on. I have this tree at my home. I don't know if you can see this thing. This is a pawpaw. It's North America's largest native fruit, and they fall. You hear them at night. I sleep and I can hear them fall and hit the ground, and that means they're ripe. So that's that moment. The predominant blooms out in this meadow out here are goldenrods and a couple of different asters. The fall foliage, it's early, but September it starts to turn. So I can, you know, from great distance, see red maples because they're starting to turn as well as other things. And then in the coming through my window at night are primarily the chorus of tree crickets, which make this kind of slow pulse. Unlike the chanting of the katydids, which have been predominant during the summer. Oh, and one more thing is, I don't know about you, we get invaded by insects in our house. So the biggest one, not size-wise, but in number, is something called the marmorated stink bug. And then I have a French door that goes into my basement. So that's when all the wolf spiders try to claim the basement. And they do so rather successfully. So there's a little bit, if you've ever corresponded with me, that's how I correspond. Like, I just have to give you like the little report of what's going on because it's enthralling and I'm always intrigued by what's going on where you are. So I'm literally going to read from this collection. Tanya, I'm sure you said in your letter, I don't remember the 50 or 60 haiku that I sent you, but it's always fun to see what an editor chooses. If you've got the journal with you, I guess there's one that is in it's an unstandard format, but I'll go ahead and share. Summer Brook, perfect skipping stone on the other side. Catching flies at the ballpark, common nighthawks. Chanterelles. San Andreas fault, her body pressed against mine. Sleepless by choice, frog song. Sound of water, our trail of clothes. Up all night to get lucky, katydids. Morning after mosses in her hair. That's one line. Campfire, the moth I become. Autumn chill, the acorn missing its cap. Faster than me, the sound of thin ice. Cordwood, stacked sunlight. Tanya, thanks for choosing those. I know, the whole thing is preceded by us sending you a selection. Well done on your part, because and I know that's work, but I also know that's fun. So process. Don't know if you noticed in there. I love music. And what I'm finding is that music is sometimes creeping into my haiku, and I'm not intentionally seeking it. There will just be moments where that lyric pops in my head. So up all night to get lucky. To be clear, that's not my style. And to be confessional, nor was it ever. But it's a line from a song. And when you hear a canopy surrounding you full of katydids all chanting, all male katydids, by the way, chanting, what's it about? And I'm sure it's about much more than that, but I'm going to distill it to this moment. And boom, the lyric pops up. So if you've read any haiku along the way and said, oh, I wonder, it could be. And there's some unusual ones that it's like, oh, I like this. No one's going to publish that. And then it happens. So I published a book last year. Would never have happened. It was always an intent, but there was tremendous encouragement by the haiku community. Tom Sacramona, at an event here on the East Coast, which I would highly recommend if any of you are into traveling, called Wild Graces. It's a day-long event. I can't say enough, and I'd like to go to these events. He greeted me warmly a couple years ago and said, oh, I'm so excited to see you again. I wanted to read your new book. And I said, Tom, I don't have a book. And he just looked at me with a head tilt. I mean, it was very purposeful. So he was an editor, I think, at that point, and it was just ringing in my ears. So what do? I don't know. I have a lot of work. I have a couple special collections. So I decided just to honor my ADD, I printed everything, started with everything I'd ever published, printed them very small, and cut them out, several collections. And I started making collections. My wife was amused initially. And what I did is I used a push pin and pinned them onto what became 3 different shelves. There was an old shelf in the basement that I just kept the wood. And so I used that. ultimately life gets in the way, and I had 3 manuscripts going. So 2 of these shelves are still hanging vertically and may or may not, they will see the light of day at some point. But I needed to escape. I was just kind of burned out at the end of summer, and took one of the shelves, a 6-foot shelf, in my car as I drove up to Wild Graces, and then disappeared into the wilds of Maine. And every day started with a swim, and then a kayak, and then just playing with haiku. And what I landed on with this collection, Ascent of Haiku, is I quickly decided these should all be within walking distance of my house. And so they are. They're all extremely local haiku. And then, the traditional collection would have them in seasonal order. Which of course makes sense, because haiku, more than anything, are about kind of phonology. They're kind of about the season, the moment in a season. And so I broke it further. There's 5 habitats, and readers who were unfamiliar with haiku urged titles between each of the chapters. And I didn't feel that was the haiku way. I felt like you're supposed to just kind of go on that journey and do that. And I don't know if I've got a minute or not. I don't need a minute, Tanya, but if I did have a minute, okay, I'll just read a couple from this collection. And I'm just literally randomly opening it, and I'm glad I must have opened this way before. Piper at the gates of dawn, wood thrush. Between a rock and a hard place, showy orchis. Cocklebur, the meadow comes home. Without a sound, no seams. Gotta love those. Slipknot, the courtship of swallows. One more urgent than mine, Song of the Sparrow. Thanks for this gathering. Thanks for inviting me in this context. I'm in awe of all the creativity that is on this screen. Thanks, Tanya, and thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'm glad you mentioned your music haiku, because I've admired them throughout journals over the years. And I actually laughed out loud when I was reading the poems to select, and read Up All Night to Get Lucky, Katydids, because I know the Daft Punk song that goes with that, and it's so out of character for you, but I just had to take that one. So thank you.
Well, I
very much.
appreciate
Wonderful.
it. It's a fun one for people not exposed to haiku, because then they go, wait, what? Wait, tell me what this is. Because
I know that line from somewhere.
because Daft Punk is not a traditional haiku reference.
And I appreciated that. Thanks for talking about your process too. It was wonderful to hear about how you absorb everything and it comes out in haiku. All right, we are going to continue with our 2 autumns reading here, and we're going to travel around to the other side of the planet, where it is the first day of autumn today. And Ron Moss is going to be treating us with a reading. So I'm going to read Ron's bio from the book. Ron C. Moss lives in Tasmania, Australia, and is a member of the Australian and British Haiku Societies. He is often asked to judge competitions and has acted as an editor on a wide variety of projects. Ron is also a visual artist and award-winning photographer, often combining his poetry and art to create haiga, both online and in various exhibitions. He has traveled to New Zealand and the United States to give presentations and workshops. Ron is the current haiga editor for Contemporary Haiban Online and the art editor for The Heron's Nest. His haiku, haiban, and haiga have appeared in many collections and prestigious anthologies. Ron is a recipient of a number of prizes and awards, including 2 Touchstone Awards. Ron's award-winning collections include The Bone Carver, Bushfire Moon, Broken Starfish, and his latest collection, Cloud Hands. Ron is also a volunteer firefighter of over 25 years and is the current brigade chief in his local brigade. And now I hand it over to you, Ron.
Thanks very much, Tanya, and it's lovely to be here. Yeah, and see all the to zoom in from Tasmania and see all the people again that I admire and love their work. Awesome job on the Two Autumns book. It's just great. When you sent me an email saying that I'd have 20 minutes, I went, whoa, wow, that's fantastic. So I gathered up a whole lot of things, because my first impression was that we just read our selection in the book, but 20 minutes, yeah, I can show a few things and talk about bits and pieces. So I've gathered up some things. Yeah, it's spring here in Tasmania, so opposite seasons to you there. I love what Jeff did by getting us all to put in something that we were seeing out in nature. I just looked out my window and I could see ducks, wallabies, and occasionally we get a platypus, which is the strangest animal on the planet. Marsupial that lays eggs, and yeah, it's a combination of about 6 different things, but it occasionally comes to see us and wallows around in the small lake we've got in front of the house here. So, and I guess my inspiration is living in a beautiful place. Of course, Tasmania is pretty rugged, but it's has an east coast and a west coast, and of course the west is pretty wild, and the east is beautiful beaches. And so my wife and I have taken up that early morning swimming, and we've managed to swim all through winter, which is an achievement. The water's down to about 10 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but it certainly is cold water therapy, but it's fantastic once you get used to it. So, and we've got several beaches that are only 5 minutes down the hill from us. We live on about 300 meters up. So many things close at hand. So of course that inspires my art and poetry all the time. So, all right, I'll start off. I'll just read a few from the selection of wildflowers in bloom. And Australia has beautiful wildflowers, especially in the Western Australia. Some stunning colours. If you Google Australian wildflowers, or you'll see some amazing. Well, we have what we call amazing varieties of orchids, native orchids that only are found in Tasmania, and they're tiny little beautiful coloured flowers. But okay. Mountain retreat, the curve of a stone, wet with rain. A change in the silence, ravens take flight. And I can hear them calling to me now as I'm reading this. Going deeper into black heart sassafras, the Currawong's song. Indigo dusk, the town quietens, star by star. Grinding ink, a duck's wingtip skims the moon. Opening Dad's pocket knife, the cold between us. Unsettled from sleep, a ghost latch opens. Just this life, the night only bloom of cirrus flowers. Mother's memorial, wading the warm sea to be with her again. Family gathering, sipping the voices in my tea. My death poem, archived in the cloud, power failure. Empty cup, the taste of moonlight. So I'd like to read from a few other sort of books and things. People probably know about First Frost. It's a lovely journal, and print journal and online journal. And it's edited by, well, Michael Dillon Welch, of course, Dale Wisely, Elizabeth McMunty-Tango, hope I said that right. And I was fortunate to, in issue 6, I gained the First Frost Award, and which was fantastic. And Dale, part of when you win the award, you can actually do 10 haiku, which he puts online. But he also sent me these amazing little books that he handmade himself. And he puts all different sort of, they're handmade with little bits of covers on them, and they're just fantastic. I've been giving them away to friends. I feel very lucky that he's done that. So well done, Dale. I'd just like to read it's beautifully hand bound in a Japanese style. So I'd like to just read a few from that. Okay. Seething night, a raven's wingtips touch the moon. Supermoon, a wombat shuffles through fresh snow. Wombats are adorable little sort of bear-like creatures that are quite chunky and quite strong, and they're relatives of wallabies and kangaroos, but they've got short legs, and they're very funny creatures, and they've got pouches in the back that carry their young. Yeah, they're very funny. Total fire ban, the thrum of choppers above the smoke line. Suddenly dusk, a rose sinks deeper in moonlight. Rolling thunder, a ripe melon falls from the vine. That first star in a mandarin sky, homecoming. Red shirt in the wind, the dueling crows. Distant gunfire, unpicked gourds hang on withered vines. And the one that won the award, which I read, which Tanya selected, which was lovely, I'll read again. Indigo dusk, the town quietens, star by star. I'd just like to read, one of the great joys of being in the haiku community is writing with and collaborating with other poets. And I think I've last counted probably over 50 people I've written with over the years, everything from Renge to Renga to sequences to, and I just love the experience. And Paula Sears, who's on here today, hi Paula, we're currently writing Renge together, and which is great fun. And so I might just read a few sequences of different types from my book. That's my last book, Cloud Hands, which you probably all know about. I'm well overdue to bring out another one. I've got more than enough haiku, and I loved hearing how Jeff talked about how he selected his collection. I did the same. I printed them all out and cut them up separately, and then just threw them. I just threw them in a big up in the air until they landed, and then tried to come up with some sort of sequence. So, and it's great fun to do that. Yeah. But, so I'll start with in honor of Gary, of course. I'll start with this is a solo Renge. It's called Sky Falls. Rain shudder, the sky falls back on the mountain. A bird of paradise bloom glistens with red. Wood ducks, their bills dipping in dark water. Plovers in raindrops calling to each other. drips of light. The sunset glows through a swamp gum. So, and then this is just a sequence of sort of bushfire related sequence. Emergency warning, wide-eyed horses speckled with ash. Firestorm, the redwood coffin, safe underground. Through the flames, the firefighter looks for the signal. Campaign bushfire, the chime of raindrops on my helmet. And this sequence is, I quite like writing sort of 3-line, 1-line, 3-line, 1-line, 3-line, 1-line. Doesn't have a name, it's just a sequence of 3 and 1 lines. So this is called Wind Chill. Snow and ice, the black of a crow splitting the white. Chimes in a wind chill. Cold footprints, the shuffle of fog into the past. Shadows break open. Dark rain, the moonlit chorus of falling stars. Frozen roses bleed. So I'd like to just share my screen now and just show a couple of other things. So I think I can do that, yes. This is a good tip if you ever share on Zoom and you want to play something with music. Just go to this more share computer sound and just click one of these. Otherwise, you're just picking up, you're just broadcasting the sound that's coming through your mic, that's been picked up by your microphone. So hope that makes sense. So this, I just play a little, as people might know, I quite often do little films of music and haiku. This one was quite a combination of things. It was, I created some ink, just some gestural sort of ink brush movements and put them together, layered them up in Photoshop and other things, and then put them together with haiku. And this one, Steve Hodge, the former editor of Prune Juice, I'm sure you know him. He's a great haiku poet. He's also a very good musician, a composer. And we quite often, it gives me some music to put to things. So I'll just play this. Red dust rain, the billabong alive with frogs. The imprint of ravens on crimson clouds. Spirals of sparks where the dogwood stood. Cloud walking, the curve of dark rain.
Smashed lightning in the break-open sky. Sitting with rivers, flowing with mountains. Death marks of a drought broken by rain. Petal on petal, each glimpse of nothingness. Chiming in the alpine lake, the brightest star.
So you probably see there that I was quite abstract in art and haiku. And I love sort of pushing all the boundaries. And that's usually what the core of my practice, really, creative practice, is sort of, working with the rules and then breaking the rules or seeing what you can do with the rules. So yeah, that's what they're there for, to use to help and then to explore out. So I forgot to look at the time, but I think I've still got a bit of time left. So I'll just show a few of my recent haiku, just to give you an idea of what I've been doing. I love sort of just very simple ink paintings as well. As you can see there, woodcutters chop echoes with crows. It's probably one of my all-time favourite things that I created. And the actual drawing of the grass was something I did in a very boring office meeting when I was working. I was just flicking the pen across the paper, and it just seemed to work with this haiku. This was just abstract sand down at my local beach. Cusp of moon, the shapes of tomorrow in the potter's hands. Playing with something I've photographed and then just using textures. Recently published in Kokako, which is the New Zealand, it's now online journal, which it's great I encourage you to submit to that one. They're doing a great job with that. One thumbprint from Millenniums of Stardust. Just something very recent. Stacking a dry stone wall, the curve of tomorrow. Just photographing textures. I love seeing textures and different patterns and things. The scent of darkness, carved with a petal's blade. And this is a bit of a favourite. Moonlight shallows, a stranded octopus enters the afterlife. I was going to read some Haiku, but I think stop share. Oh, back again. I might just talk briefly about this great new book, One Thread. Janice Doppler. She's brought together, I think there's 26 haiku poets, and asked them to write about their feelings of zoka, which is a term Basho used, and it's been translated as the creative, and what people, their own feelings and thoughts on that in their own haiku practice. So each poet was asked to write a essay of some sort, 1-page essay, followed by 12, I think it was, haiku. I'm not sure if any of the poets are here today. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's just come out, and it's I was fortunate to do the cover. So that came out really nice. That was a watercolor I did. And it's a fantastic read. Janice, the first section, she sort of speaks quite in depth about Zoka, the term Zoka, and how it applies to the Chinese and Japanese ink paintings and poetry. And yeah, so it's quite a wonderful read. And then just reading each of the poets' own essays and their haiku, of course, is just fantastic. So I might just quickly finish with a couple of very short haiku that are quite special to me, because haiku is a very deep and spiritual practice for me, and being close to nature, and it's the core of my life, really. So I'm very honoured to be with you here all today, and thanks to Gary and Tanya and all the committee and that for asking me or inviting me to read. So this one's called All That Is. The sunlight rain sparkles. Sorry, I'll start again. All that is. The sunlit rain sparkles with raindrops and indigo diamonds as the mountain path disappears along with me into low clouds. I bow to a twisted pine, and it seems to return my bow, taking endless years to do so. Do I end at the end tip of my fingertips? Or, as the ancients tell us, we are all that is, we are all one. Mixing ink, the old master breathes, a river of mountains. And just to finish, another short haiku, life as it is. The haiku that flow through me are spells of wonder. Moments grab and hold me, deep within mountains or high in the endless sky. Such complete absorption, even the moon and stars cannot find me. Pink lightning, the rap of thunder, bone on bone. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we're going to move on to our last readers of the day. And so I will introduce, I will read the bio from the anthology, and then we will hear Sean Carlton and Yvette Nicole Kolodji read Deborah P Kolodji's poems. Deborah P Kolodji was the moderator of the Southern California Haiku Study Group. She also served as the California Regional Coordinator for the Haiku Society of America, and on the Board of Directors for Haiku North America. A native Californian, she held a degree in mathematics from the University of California. With over 1,000 published haiku to her name, Debbie found writing inspiration in the beaches, mountains, deserts, gardens, and urban life of Los Angeles County. Her first full-length collection of haiku and senyu, Highway of Sleeping Towns, published by Shabda Press, 2016, won a Touchstone Distinguished Book Award in 2017, and her e-chapbook of speculative haiku, Tug of a Black Hole, Title IX Press, 2021, won second place in the chapbook category of the 2022 Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association's Elgin Awards. Her most recent books include a tanka and haiku collaboration with Mariko Kitabuko, Distance, Tanku Sequences and Sets by Shabda Press, 2023, and Vital Signs, an excellent collection of haiku and senyu about her ongoing battle with cancer, published by Cuttlefish Books in 2024. And now Sean and Yvette are going to read for their mom.
Thank you. Wildflowers in bloom. When your children take care of you. After natural disasters in Southern California, whether an El Nino deluge or a Santa Ana wind-fueled wildfire, a glorious super bloom covering the hills and deserts will often emerge from the scarred earth. All her life, Deborah P Kolodji, our mother, has sown seeds into the wind, nurturing and nourishing her children, lifelong friendships and relationships near and far, inspiring and building poetic community. In her 5-year battle with cancer, those seeds sprouted into a profusion of love and support that sustained Mom. And that love and her poetic legacy became a field of flowers which we now tend and continue to enjoy, her poetry enriching our lives even as she now rests within the earth. Wildflowers in bloom when your children take care of you. Thank you for featuring our mother, Deborah P Kolodji, in her second Two Autumns anthology, her first being Lighting a Candle, which was, I think, over 10 years ago. Let's see, it was 2010. And that one was with Roberta Beery, Victor Ortiz, and Eva Story, edited by Michael Dillon Welch. And we are so honored to read today. I am Sean Carlton, and I am so pleased to be here alongside my sister, Yvette Nicole Kolodji, both of us also haiku poets. Mom loved being a part of HPNC, traveling up north to its events and readings, whilst leading and building a sister organization, the Southern California Haiku Study Group down south. This anthology and reading is deeply meaningful to us. It is her final anthology submission before she left this world, and we are so thrilled that her poem, Wildflowers, was chosen to be the title of such a beautiful collection. Thistles in bloom. Grandmother's needle threaded with purple. His oxygen tube stretches the length of the house. Winter seclusion. Fallen rose petals. My mother's dog misses her too. It's interesting that some of these poems about my mom's experiences with her parents ring true for our experiences as well. When my grandmother died, she took care of my grandmother's dog, Zoe, who passed away, a few years back. And then now, when my mom died, she died alongside her dog, Patrick, her beloved dog. And now we're taking care of her dog. So these are her poems, and yet they have this emotional resonance in this moment for me. And here's a tanka. A lone butterfly circles the milkweed. No one ever ready for the void of a mother's death. Long wait. A stray pianist plays the hospital piano. My brother, when we would take her to the hospital, that became a regular thing for us. And so they sometimes had the pianos, and he started playing the piano one time. And so that inspired that. My mom loved, hearing him play the piano in the house, and he would do that often for her. And she also loved going to classical music concerts, whether at the Hollywood Bowl or Disney Hall, or to see concerts. In my youth, we would go regularly to see our friend Nicole play with the Claremont Young Musicians Orchestra. Chopin Etude. Your fingers feel my sadness. Alone. The nurse covers me with a warmed blanket. The blush of dawn through a hospital window. Vital signs. We talked a little bit about vital signs. This is the book she published earlier this year, her final book. It is just a magnificent masterpiece. It's about her battle with cancer, and yet, even though she ultimately lost that battle, this is a hopeful book. This is a humorous book, and there are so many people that have spoken to me about how when they read this book, they may have not liked poetry so much. They may not have known about haiku. and it resonated with them, particularly people that are caretakers, people that have experienced battles with health issues, cancer, and hospital workers. And when we would take mom to the hospital, she would take a whole bunch of these books and she would just pass it out to the nurses and staff at the hospital. And sometimes people, like, they would kind of wait around to talk to her, and the nurses would just tell her, like, oh my gosh, like, I love your book so much, like, can I have one too? I'm so inspired by it. And that was just really something special. And that's one thing that she really did with poetry in general. She not only wrote her poetry, but she wanted others to appreciate it too, and to find meaning in it. And it was almost therapeutic for her. And she taught me to kind of see it that way too, as a way to kind of process kind of deep emotions and pain and events in life. So The Blush of Dawn, Through a Hospital Window, Vital Signs, available on Amazon. House Finches at the, oh, and this is dedicated to the nurses and staff and her cancer support group, a group of women who are survivors of cancer who would meet on Zoom and really kind of share their experiences. And that was really helpful to her too. House Finches at the Feeder, Cancer Support Group. Hospital Bracelet, the numbered tag on a condor's wing. That's kind of a motif in this, the condor. She was inspired of it by the condor. She found hope in the condor because the condor was on the brink of extinction and came back. And so she knew that, like, against all odds, the condor came back. And, you know, the condor is kind of like underappreciated and kind of looks really weathered, and she saw that comparison with the battle with cancer and with those that are fighting that battle. Bent lily stems, the wheelchair in the corner. When mom passed away, we were at the house waiting for the coroner to come. And, you know, if anybody's had that experience, that can be a lengthy wait. And it's just kind of a frustrating. So I just picked up Vital Signs and I opened it to this poem. And then I looked up, and there in the corner was mom's wheelchair. So it was like really, like, just randomly opened it to that poem. And then I saw visually in front of me that image, that I think she was inspired by this as well. So Bent Lily Stems, the wheelchair in the corner. Forest Stillness, Condors Return to the Redwoods. So now we're gonna take a little liberty here, and we're gonna read a renge that my mom and I wrote together. My mom loved the Rose Parade. She went to nearly every Rose Parade. I think it was canceled one year for COVID. And maybe she got sick one year, but she went to nearly every Rose Parade since 1978. Mom is very much a Southern California girl. She loved to travel, but this was home. Her poetry is infused with images of Southern California, and we lived in Pasadena, and so this is a kind of a big event that she would do. So we submitted this. We wrote this together at the parade together. And then we submitted it, and it won second place in the HPNC Renge contest in 2022. And so Yvette, my sister, who's also really a wonderful poet, writes a lot more than I do and gets published a lot more than I do. So really carrying on mom's legacy, she's going to read this with me. So it's called Turning the Corner. Sermons before the Rose Parade, Hellfire's Warmth.
A woman rolls up her sleeping bag.
Magnolia Tree, a marching band from Mississippi.
Spectators in their game gear, cheerleaders floats.
Trailing the Clydesdales, Pooper Scooper horseplay.
8-foot floral bees, stalled by our grandstand photo op.
So my sister read my mom's part and I read my part, and now I'm going to pass it over to Yvette to kind of take the lead, and we're going to read a renge that she wrote with my mom.
Yeah. This poem is entitled Angst, and it was an honorable mention in 2022 at the HSA Renge Award. Okay, Angst. Sneaking back in past curfew, a prick of the rosebush.
Snapped twig. The motion sensor light.
My mother sits on my bed, not another talk.
Waning moon. My daughter's monosyllable answers.
2 weeks grounded, my lights turn off.
Bathroom trash can. I worry about her period.
It's kind of funny how poems can be inspired by things adjacent to it, because the last haiku my mom wrote in that poem is about her and my grandma. So my grandma was worried that she was missed her period. So she looked in her trash can. And it's kind of interesting that as, you know, a mother-daughter poem, she wrote about an experience from her mother's perspective when she was, you know, writing a poem with me. So it's kind of a nice mirroring there. So as you can see, my mom really influenced a lot of people and inspired people to write haiku, particularly Sean and me, and definitely many others. And I remember when my mom actually was starting to get into haiku more, and she was shifting from her longer poetry to more haiku. And I know for me at that point, I didn't yet have the haiku bug. So I used to tease her and say, you know, her haiku would really helped hone her like longer poetry stuff. And then of course, you know, she would do these haiku games with me, and she would say haiku and then I would say one back, and we would back and forth haiku. And because of that, you know, I started dreaming in haiku. So like her love of haiku was super infectious. So hence why, you know, we wrote together, both Sean and I, with my mom, and we would text each other poems a lot. So my mom's poem, Morning Tide Pools. A hermit crab tries on the bottle cap. As many of you probably know, my mom had some trends in her haiku, and one of the big trends was the ocean, because she was really drawn to the ocean. Winter sea, the rise and fall and fall. Crude oil seep, the heart rate of a bluefin tuna. Let me reread that because I muddled that up. Crude oil seep, the heart rate of a bluefin tuna. Not yet extinct, the rainbow sheen of another oil spill. Sea star, arms wide, I sink into sand. Stingray, a flutter of life in her belly. So my mom would constantly talk about how when she was pregnant, like the differences between her pregnancies with all of us. And my oldest brother, Kirk, was just super quiet. Like you could barely feel him, but all of a sudden a really loud noise and he would jump, and it would be like a big like movement in her belly. So I always felt like that one is very much towards Kirk. A flower blooms where it shouldn't, premature baby. And when she had Sean at a very, very early state. Yeah. So that one's about Sean. Wallpaper roses, the infant daughter after 2 sons. Now, my mom would always say that like um, she had like a dream that she would have a daughter after two sons, and so she dreamt about it. And then so when she found out she was having me, she got all excited. So I had the pink room, and she dressed me up in all these like frilly dresses, and she went very girl crazy when I was born. Um, Dozen red roses. She examines the bruise in the mirror. I love this poem of hers. It was always one of my favorites. And depending on when I read it, it kind of shifts for me. So, like when I was younger, I saw this kind of sadness and this like a little bit of helplessness. And of course, I always visualize these red roses being the bruises on the body. And then as I kind of grew a little older, I see it more of as a, you know, this idea of you're looking at what has happened and you have that choice to either, stay or move on. So I think depending on what stage of life and when you read it, you can view it in different ways. And it's beautiful. I love that poem. It's my favorite. Lingerie drawer after the divorce, skimpier. And that one I also loved because it was just so humorous and funny. Flooded playground, the frown of a rainbow. Pi day, an irrational number of butterflies. Um, I know, Tanya, you mentioned that she had a degree in math. And it's interesting because she's always been loved poetry and loved science and all of that at an early age. Like she will say like, oh, she got into poetry through her elementary school teacher constant reading Poe and constantly reading Poe in the class. And when she went to USC, actually, she was a literary major. And what's interesting is that my mom would tell this story about how, as a freshman, she accidentally got into a senior class, and it was a class for juniors and seniors, and it was Shakespeare, and it was an easy A for her. So she was frustrated. She was like, "Ugh, I want to be challenged." So then she went to math because she felt like it was more of a challenge for her. So it she always had both. Euler's number, your litany of unrepeatable excuses. Winter solitude, the company of unshelved books. Unfinished book, a vegetable garden not yet planted. Floral arrangement, the urge to mother my poems. What comes after the semicolon, rainy moon? Summer quiet, the stars dare me to count them. Shelter in place, the days I feel like an astronaut. What's interesting is, how I mentioned how my mom was always drawn to science and literature. She would tell me that she remembered as like a young girl seeing like watching the astronauts go up in space, and she would say that she would tell my grandma, "Oh, I want to be an astronaut," and my grandma's response is, "Oh, you can't be an astronaut. You're a girl. How are you going to manage all the dealing with the periods up in space?" And my grandfather's like, "You can be an astronaut." So my grandfather was very much a go for your dream. So CT scan, journey to Mars. Dried prunes, I put on my brave face. Hearing loss, my daughter's voice turns into ocean. Um, this one's interesting because I was actually doing a haiku thing with my mom, and we were going on a boat with a few haiku poets, and I feel like this poem is inspired by that because there was moments where her hearing would go in and out on that trip. So yeah, no coin for the boatman, dark waters. Dimes and quarters fall out of his pocket, Perseids. Now, my mom was obsessed with the Perseids, like, you know, she was obsessed with space. And you can see that was another haiku trend was space and you know, but the Perseids was particularly special to her because it fell around her birthday on August 11th. So she would always get excited about the Perseids because it was so close to her birthday. White marble, I am small at the feet of Lincoln. Silent cannon at Gettysburg, birdsong. Overripe loquats, the squished breasts of a mammogram. I'm going to read that over. Overripe loquats, the squished breasts of a mammogram. I always love that poem because mammograms are really uncomfortable. So, canopy shyness. Why do I feel radioactive? This is an interesting poem to me, particularly because because I'm a former scientist, and my mom and I would talk about random science facts and random scientific concepts. So it's interesting because I'm the person who talked to her and discussed with her about canopy shyness. And I was, telling her about about it and showing her a video on it. And then, she wrote a poem about it. So it's kind of interesting how our love of science kind of, made our way into either her poetry or my poetry. So, cycling the subject, turkey vultures. Oh, pardon again. Circling the subject, turkey vultures. The world's so big without you in it, summer sea. I love that poem. In spite of your silence, the birth of stars. Now I'm gonna give the floor to Sean.
Thank you guys, and thank you for allowing us to kind of go through kind of so many poems and kind of really a variety of her legacy. His old toolbox, no way to fix all that's broken. My day in slow motion, coy. Mackerel sky, I catch a glimpse of hope. Tanya, if you want to share the slides I gave you. So my mom and I kind of over the last couple of years, she didn't let the cancer stop her from doing what she wanted to do. And one thing that she wanted to do was travel. And as she would travel, she'd be inspired to write. And so I have 20 years, and I just dropped some, of journals like this, filled with her poems. And some of them, she got very colorful, and she would do colored pencils, and she would put stickers and stamps and various things. And there was even a code, like them being circled meant something, and then she would kind of like show the changes and whatnot. And so these are some poems, and some of the selections that were selected for this anthology are in this journal in these pages, and some of them I added that are in the reading. So Mom and I, we went on an Arizona trip. She wanted to go to more national parks. She hadn't been to the South Rim and the Grand Canyon, so we decided to do that together. And also it being handicapped accessible, it was something that she could do with her walker. So weekend traffic, A saguaro gives me the finger. Actually, this is on the other page. I think I got them mixed up. But anyway, this is if you go to the next slide, Tanya, and then go back to this one. Apologies. Yes, so this one's over here on the second page. Again, weekend traffic. A saguaro gives me the finger. And then on the first page, on the bottom here in pink, restaurant menu. A random no on the second page, but like on the restaurant menu. A random stranger's political views. And so I really just think this kind of writing process, how she did the journaling, is really cool. So then going back to the other page, the first slide that we were, yes, there we go. And I love that she has the stamps here from the national park. Colorado River, the chasm between our politics. And then on the top, encouraging result after the scan, desert sky. So definitely these trips were really important to her, but sometimes it was hard for her to go on trips. And so we had a trip planned to the Redwoods and we didn't make it. And she was in the hospital, and as a consolation, we decided, let's go to Ventura. She said that she needed some ocean therapy. So I was sitting next to her when we just got to Ventura. It was late and we went to a restaurant. It was already dark. And then we kind of just walked around the boardwalk to just kind of experience the ocean because we'd driven all that way. And we sat there and we wrote haiku together while staring at the surf. Waning moon, the sea roars a lullaby. High tide, the relentless force of time. And then, we did some other things like whale watching on that trip, and she wrote some humpback haiku as well. And another one that I think might have been inspired by that trip was glass bottom boat, feeling the sway of a kelp forest. The ocean was really her muse. Ebb and flow of my fear, dark ocean. Now, I guess we can probably take the slide off, but I think that's really cool. And we have a lot of these slides. So another trip goal that we had the national park goal. We had also a goal to see all 50 states. Mom had been to 39 states as of a couple of years ago. And then we went to Haiku North America. We hit a couple more states. We hit Kentucky. We got Indiana under our belt. And then Marco and my mom, we did a reading in Pennsylvania. And we got, on that trip, we went to Cape May, New Jersey, where some poets are. And then we went across on a ferry to Delaware. So we got Delaware on the list. And mom, went and she got a stay in South Carolina. She said, we got to do South Carolina, North Carolina. So I said, let's do it. So we flew to Charleston, and we went to kind of a tea garden, and we wrote poetry, and we did a lot on that trip, even though obviously she's in a walker and she's weak and she has trouble eating, but she still wanted to do these trips. So she wrote sweet tea at a new hangout, Spanish moss. And that was written on Mother's Day. We were at a museum and we were sipping tea on the veranda. But, and then we went to North Carolina to Airlie Botanical Gardens. She loved botanical gardens. She would go to botanical gardens wherever she could. And this was inspired there. Surface ripples, moss growing on a turtle's shell. But that was our last trip. That was our last trip. We wanted to go to Alaska, but we didn't make it on the Alaska cruise. Sunsetting a dream. The orange sky full of bitterness. And that was one of the final poems that I have in her little notebook. One of the last few poems. Orionids. Even the sky can't sleep tonight. At Mom's funeral service, it was quite beautiful. We were able to infuse it with poetry in every way. Kirk and I did eulogies with poems. Yvette, just as she did today, she did kind of a poetry tribute and shared stories about Mom in the poetry tribute. And we even, you know, in the Catholic Mass, you have prayers of the faithful. We did like a high boon style prayer of the faithful, put poems with the prayer of the faithful. And I was nervous about the priest. I was like, the priest needs to know that he needs to mention haiku. And I told my friend who I knew from Boy Scouts, who was in charge of bereavement ministry at the church, like, we need to talk to the priest. She's like, Sean, don't worry about it. He knows what he's doing. And I was like, I'm still anxious about it. The priest did this amazing sermon where he incorporated all of her stars poems and talked about her poetry and how she was a mystic and saw the stars. It was beautiful. And this is another poem that the priest put in his sermon. Shorter days, the pastor's sermon longer. And so the pastor said, okay, look, I'm not going to go on too much. So someone asked me, what is your mother's death poem? And I think we had some poems in there that are really resonant about life and death and aging. And in fact, I feel like the whole book, Vital Signs, there are a lot of poems in here that speak about that process. And many of these, I think, would qualify. But there's really not one poem that I would say fits that. You know, there's this like, oh, you know, the poet's last breath. It was kind of a surprise. We knew that the end was coming, but we did not know the moment. So I wasn't there with the notepad to write it down. But I think some of these poems really are resonant, and they may not have been about that life and death and transition experience, but to me, I feel that they resonate in that experience. And so perhaps one of these would qualify. What's left of us? Caves on Mars. Unresolved issues. The black hole in the center of our galaxy. Away from all I've ever known. Fallen camellia. And I see a lot of hope in this one. My steps, your steps, morning sand. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for letting us share on her behalf. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was so good to hear from both of you and to hear all of your stories. And I'm going to need to get some Kleenex pretty soon, but I wanted to hear everything. Thank you.
That was so moving. So moving.
Very touching.
Thank you.
It was very beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Your
Thank
mom was an inspiration and a good friend, and I did haiku walks with her in the gardens, and we went to AWP together, and she just, yeah, I need the Kleenex too, but it's so precious that the two of you wrote and could share today. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That was so moving and so truthful about her and her love of haiku and her love of you too, and her children. Really a beautiful tribute to her. Thank you for that.
Yeah, in many ways, it was sort of a conclusion for all of us as well. You know, we've loved and known her for so long, and I've worked with her on so many projects, like in North America and all these various things. So it's nice for us to all have this closure together as a community, you know.
Yes. And it's a delight to know that she has passed the torch to you. It will be carried on.
Yes, you gave something that no one else could give, the two of you, cooperating like that and carrying on her poetry and sharing with us some of the moments even at the end. So Sean and Yvette, that was so beautiful. Brings us all to tears and also gives us all hope.
Well, I hope that writing haiku will be something that you will each find helpful to you in your grief and in your ongoing lives. As you know, it gave her so much. I hope you'll find something as well.
I think that you really captured your mom, both of you. I mean, and thank you for showing and sharing the visuals of of her writing, because that made her present. I mean, the vibration energy of her script and her circling, I could feel her, and I sense her here very much smiling at both of you. She feels ever present to me. And I just want to thank you. I feel her in your words and in your voice, in your presentation, in every aspect of what you shared today. And I send you both my love.
Yeah, this was, I think I typed in move beyond words, but I can always find words. That Sean met both of you at HNA conferences, and sorry, you're an extension of your parent, right? It was kind of like, oh, Debbie's children. And but that just made you larger than you were. And I know that's not necessarily how the world should work, but both of you got this instant respect from me. I can't remember how I necessarily demonstrated that. And I can't imagine doing what you just did. And clearly the strength that your mother embraced is within you, because that's got to be heart-wrenching work, and we're all so much richer for it. So just really thank you.
Yeah, I think your reading really shows what this community is about.
My mom really valued the haiku community a lot, and that she loved you guys a lot. So you were her extended family.
And just real quick here, Sean and Yvette, you guys are the reason that I chose that for the title poem when I knew you guys would be reading. So
Thank you. I mean, your comments initially, and like the more I kind of sit on that poem, it really has a lot of meaning and kind of a lot to unpack there. And I think a lot of these poems, I love Highway of Sleeping Towns, but Vital Signs also is a very cohesive, hopeful work, and I'm glad that we were able to kind of bring those in, and hopefully it gets some recognition. It's still, we're trying to get it out there and publish it, get some awards for it and recognition for it. I think it's just a remarkable thing that she did, and to find the energy for the poetry, even as she barely had the energy to stay awake and barely had the energy to eat. And as Yvette mentioned, these communities meant a lot to her. Just yesterday, there was just a fantastic Southern California Haiku Study Group meeting. And, they had a kukai, and just reading through all the wonderful poems from all the poets there, where she kind of really shepherded that community. And now it's carrying on the work through Naya, who's kind of taking on and a whole host of people, including Yvette and Bona and others. It is remarkable. And HNA, of course, she was on the board and cared about that deeply. And, Yukiteki and the groups up in Washington State and just all over, she loved to participate, and also HPNC. And thank you for giving her this opportunity, and for giving us the opportunity to share and read today.
For the Southern California Haiku group, I have to also give a shout out to Lee and Joan and also Vicky, who they, as well as Naya and everyone else who has been really helping shepherd it on. I think honestly, all of the different haiku communities my mom was part of, each one had a special connection, because I know. So it's interesting, like there was these shifts, and like I kind of can track it a little bit with my lifestyle, like because when I was in high school, that's when she started really getting into haiku, I feel like. And then when I was in college is when she went hardcore into haiku. So it just was interesting, because I remember there was moments where she would come up and visit haiku or like HPNC, and do all the events here, and then we would meet up and I would meet up with her at some of the events. And so I remember the Autumn's reading because I was there and I was in college at that time and I stopped by. And then I've met a lot of, you back then when I was in college. And so like she would come up a lot and around that time, and particularly for this group. And so this group mattered to her, a lot too,
Mm.
Yeah, we know she did. Well, it was a beautiful reading. The whole reading, the whole 2 Autumns reading was beautiful. And I thank the 4 poets and Tanya for conducting the reading and producing the book for us. It's a beautiful book, and it adds to the long legacy of the 2 Autumns reading.
Mm.
Yes, it was such an honor to be with such great poets like Jeff, Ron, and Susan earlier. It was beautiful.
It's the beauty of hearing the original voices of the poets reading their own work, in their own words. And fortunately, Sue has recorded these things for us, and it goes into our archives, and they can be listened to again in the future.